Yeah, no, that's certainly been a major
Yeah.
talking point on social media and Twitter in particular, just as the Fox coverage was on Saturday night in Knoxville. I think that's what we have to start with. Maybe I should say the lack of coverage presented to us on the FS1 broadcast that came under a lot of criticism for missing several key moments of the race, most notably the flip by Jessica Friesen. You see Kyle Rivas of Getty Images was able to capture this photograph of Friesen flipping over when she hit the inside bank. Unfortunately, the Fox coverage did not only miss the original flip as it happened, only having the aftermath of Friesen's truck beached on the embankment there. They didn't have a single replay at all, and that was just one of many problems that people had with the coverage. Other issues included taking side-by-side commercials between race winner Todd Gilliland's final lap and the front stretch interview, as well as getting his name wrong on one of the graphics. Now, here's what LastCar's Brock Beard had to say about the coverage on his post-race live stream.
What was that? what what on earth, Fox? I probably should have called this "What the Fox." That was probably good. Actually, that should have been the subtitle of this. But I I'm gonna have a feeling I'm probably gonna need that later on this year for something else that with the remaining Truck Series schedule.
Brandon, I know we've talked about the Fox coverage on this show in the past and all year. You think back to the Atlanta race with the whole shake and bake girls controversy and just the constant shots of the fans and everything. And this isn't a new issue when it comes to FS1 and particularly Truck Series broadcasts. But was Saturday night the worst that it's ever been? In your opinion?
Thank you for reminding me about Atlanta and all the other woes we've had so far this season. Yeah, it's been a struggle to be sure. And I think the worst part about it, Ben, is that it's probably made my enjoyment of the Truck Series less just because I know it's going to be on a Fox broadcast. And I hate that, but it's sad that this is the standard that we've just become so accustomed to that we don't really notice it's bad until it gets really bad. And Fox is and has made a mess really of the planning of their camera shots and execution of it and getting key things that you think would be so simple to capture when you're on a half-mile track like Knoxville. There's not much room for error. There's not much room to miss. And we were talking before the show, either you're not having enough cameras at the facility to make these shots to get everything captured, or you're too zoomed in, which might be the case. I'm sure they got plenty of cameras, but they're too zoomed in to all the action. And I don't know how you can remedy this issue unless somebody who actually is in the Fox elite can say, hey, we have a problem. And I know you're about to have a huge rant here, and I can't wait to hear it.
Well, yes, I know Kobe thinks I'm going to go full Stephen A. Smith mode on this show. I think I'll do my best to keep my emotions in check and not go that far there. Listen, everybody. There's I don't even know where to begin, because Brandon, what you brought up a good point about the zooming issue, and that's been an issue with Fox, in all three series that they broadcast for a long time now. You have a half-mile track here. I was reminded, getting ready for the show tonight, ESPN missed Elliott Sadler's record-breaking impact at Pocono in 2010. But at least they had one particular shot, because everybody was so focused on Kurt Busch, that you had one angle that could show Sadler going into the initial impact. We can't tell what happened to him to get him there, but that's a 2.5-mile track, and you had a crash already in motion. So maybe you could say that, it's not necessarily excusable, but it's at least understandable why you might have missed that one. This is a half-mile track here. And in this day and age, to not have a camera pointed anywhere on the track, to be able to go back and show a replay of what happened, is simply inexcusable. And another point that I brought up on social media Saturday night is, it's 2022 now. This isn't like 50 years ago when it was so revolutionary for CBS to put a camera in Cale Yarborough's car and the technology was unbelievable. What's stopping us from having an onboard camera on every single truck? I mean, when you think about it, they can't be, that much of a hassle. We've had this technology for decades now. Formula One have a camera on every single one of their cars in that series. The IndyCar series, I think, at least half the field had in-car cameras on the NBC broadcast for Road America. So why in NASCAR are we still relegated to, only 6 or 9 or however many trucks it is, having an onboard shot? I think the advantages of the onboard, go beyond just showing what happens in the race. I think a lot of times maybe Fox is a little bit too obsessed with the onboard cameras or the in-car shots, when they're actually showing the action. But when you're going back to see a replay or going back to try to figure out what went down or what happened there, the onboards can tell a bit more of a story than you can just get from the outside shots. And in this particular instance, imagine if Jessica Friesen had an onboard roof camera on the top of her truck. That would definitely tell the full story there. Now, all credit in the world to the photographers, and Jordan Teagues, I know, had his 15 minutes of fame on Saturday night because he actually was recording amateur video from the stands and ended up getting the back end of the footage of Friesen's flip there. But, we've got to, we talked about this as well before we came on the air, Brandon. How many people are honestly, if we're being honest here, interactive on NASCAR Twitter on any given race weekend?
We agreed about 5,000 or so.
5,000.
I mean,
I think
people that are actively tweeting and actively being involved, not just following a bunch of people.
And for a truck race, I think that's probably more on the generous side of things, right? You think about, and particularly for this truck race, you had the ARCA race at Berlin, which we'll get into later on in the show, and you also had SRX on primetime on CBS, which was their first race of the year. So I think, I haven't seen the ratings. I don't know if the ratings are out yet for the truck race, but I imagine it might have even been less than that. I think a good estimate for the Truck Series ratings on FS1 is usually somewhere in, the 450 to 700,000 range, depending on, the track and the time of day and the broadcast window and everything. So if we're using those, let's just say for the sake of argument here, it's 5,000 on Twitter versus 500,000 watching the broadcast. That means that 1% of the viewing audience is also actively scrolling through Twitter during the race. That means that 99% of the people watching the truck race on Saturday night had no idea that Jessica Friesen flipped, had no idea. Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
And still don't know.
And still don't know. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. They had no idea she flipped and no idea that she got back in the race. I mean, that was the other thing. Brock was talking, in his post-race live stream, like he was expecting to have to write a Jessica Friesen article. But what a story it is that the truck went over and ended up getting back in the race and was out there logging laps at the end of the race so that she didn't end up being credited with a last place finish. They had no idea that any of this had happened. They just saw a truck beached on the banking there on the inside of a track and had no idea how it got there. And it's inexcusable enough that they missed the flip actually happening. It's even more inexcusable that nobody in the director's box went to the booth and said, like, hey, we have to mention that. I mean, because I assume these people, are being told that, or at least are seeing, the NASCAR on Fox Twitter account, is seeing what's going on social media and everything. They had to have known it that at some point before they went off the air that Friesen had actually gone over. So why was nobody in the booth here telling them, hey, we need to explain to people that we only have the aftermath, but she actually tumbled over and landed back on all fours and is now back in the race? That's part of a story. You're supposed to be, the broadcast is the art of visual storytelling, right? How can you be telling the full story if you don't even acknowledge that she flips? I mean, you don't have the footage. Okay, that's a problem. Obviously, we need to make sure that we take steps to make sure that doesn't happen again. But then you make it worse by just pretending it doesn't happen. I mean, I don't know if they were just too embarrassed to bring it up, but it's just unbelievable to me that nobody even brought it up on the broadcast after the fact. And all those people watching, I mean, I saw people, Haley Deegan just posted her race vlog, and I saw a couple people in the comments because she put Jessica's flip up in the thumbnail of the video. And there were people in the comments saying,
Jessica flipped?
Jessica flipped. Yeah. They still, 48 hours after the race, if you're not on Twitter, if you're not on social media, do you know that happened? And I think a lot of people don't. And that's bad.
It's really despicable that time and time again that Fox has been what's made our headline rather than the race itself. It's just mind-blowing. And it's come to the point where I'm no longer angry or frustrated at Fox. Like, I really want to go inside and see what exactly where the root of the problem is. Like, I'm not even mad anymore. I just want to figure out what the problem is because it's obviously something major.
Yeah. Well, I was talking with Brock last night, and he mentioned the same thing. Like the blood pressure went up in Atlanta when they kept going back to the shake and bake girls. It wasn't even that at this point, because unfortunately, and I even said this on Twitter as well, I'd say it's unbelievable, but it's not. This is what we've come to expect. But every time that I think this is a new low, this is an all-time low for Fox Sports and the NASCAR broadcast,
They'll find a way.
They find a way. You're absolutely right. I still think the worst individual moment was the Martinsville race a handful of years ago, where the feed went out and we had like the muffed radio call of the last 2 laps. And then they cut to, I think was that the race that Todd Gilliland won, the fall Martinsville race. Anyway, they literally missed the last 2 laps in the last restart. But as in terms of the overall production, because we'll keep going here, it wasn't just, I mean, the missed flip was obviously the biggest issue.
No, there was more though.
Yeah, there was, and the other thing that's just so mind-boggling here, have you watched a Fox highlight reel or a Fox like promo for upcoming races? They love the crashes. They love the flips. They love the action. They love to market that. They think that that's what draws people in. And I think when you look at the thumbnails on YouTube and whichever ones have the most views, you know, I hate to admit that people just watch NASCAR for the crashes. I'd like to think that the real fans, you know, come for much more than that. But I think things get so sensationalized that that's actually what draws a lot of people in. You missed the flip entirely. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, I know I just said it's not unbelievable at this point, but at the same time, how do you miss that?
I don't know. I have no explanation for how they missed that. It completely blows my mind, and they're going to do it again somehow in a couple of weeks.